Hey guys, Chris Lampersky here. Just want to answer a few questions that people have had for me over the course of the last few months or even years, and that I get in group runs up here in Huntersville, North Carolina, with F3 Lake Norman. Made a lot of good friends um, with this group, and a lot of them are new to running. And I am fortunate to have about 17 years or so of running industry experience, and so yeah, I can share a little bit, with what I have learned, what I know, and what can hopefully benefit some people to help out with their running progression and to keep them injury free, especially at this time when we have maybe a little extra time on our hands to go out and run and do a little more strength training or whatever it may be, but it might be by ourselves. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. So I used to work with a gentleman named Mike Bell, and Mike asked the question, what's been the biggest change in running shoes since the 10 years plus ago when I worked in the running industry? So there's a lot to that. Shoes have changed a lot in 10 years. I would say the biggest thing that has changed over the course of 10 years would be probably the midsole materials. Just the technology, the compounds that have changed in the course of 10 years is pretty remarkable. I remember when Saucony came out with the Kinvara, and it was a lightweight trainer, but the material that they used in the midsole and in the upper, it was incredible, and everybody loved it. It's still out today. Next, Adidas came with Boost, and it was one of the most responsive, or the most responsive material that anybody had ever made, with a TPU compound. So now we're getting to all these different compounds and making the shoes lighter, but with more cushion and more responsive, so you can go faster, you can go farther, where you couldn't in the past with our standard EVA material. So uppers went to knits, from typical mesh with lots of overlays, and now we have hot melt overlays. It looks better, it's lighter, so everything's moving to lighter. I guess that would be the biggest change. Not a lot of severe overpronators, I guess, in the marketplace. They're there, but as the shoes have evolved, they found a way to make a shoe that's probably a little bit lighter, a little bit faster off the ground than some of the old traditional models when we worked together. So yeah, that's just like, I guess, take case examples like the Brooks Beast. It's still around, but a lot of shoes have modified to be a little bit lighter, so people can feel a little poppier. All right, so the next thing I had someone ask was Primo. So Primo asked, I often find one shoe that I love, and then the next year, the next season, it's changed. Why do they change it? Do they change it every year? And this is with every vendor, every manufacturer, it's going to be different. Some manufacturers like Asics, they had the GT series of stability shoes, and that thing just ran forever without much change at all, and people just are still buying it to this day. And then other people, they say, hey, we want to push the envelope, make things a little bit better. Maybe you have to keep in mind that everybody has different feet, so you get lots of feedback and say, this shoe's too narrow, this shoe's too wide. So from all the feedback they get after they make subtle changes, they maybe try to go back, and it just doesn't fit the way that you remembered it. It's just, it depends on what you had previously before to that new shoe, and maybe it fits you perfectly, and it was just a big change from what you had previously. And maybe the next shoe you were expecting another big change, and it didn't change. So it's just all personal preference. So it just really depends on the manufacturer, where their heads are at, what feedback they have from consumers, but also store staff members, people in the industry who hear lots of feedback. So just keep that in mind. That's why personally I like to switch my shoes up, so I'm not kind of locked into one, but that's just my own personal preference. All right, so next question, discussing pros and cons of different drops in shoes as it relates to what it can help with from a stride or prevent injuries, but also harder on the calf. Oh, that was a kind of an interesting way to word it. What do you prefer? Is there things to consider for the trail, road with drop or distance? Now it's from Doug Arrington. Yeah, so I guess my personal preference now is a lower drop shoe. I've tried some of the zero drop models over the years, and I found that personally it was a little too aggressive for me. And that being said, it depends on what you have going on. If you have, injuries from, standpoint of maybe your knees, I know a lot of people have kind of gone to a shoe like an Ultra, a zero drop shoe that had a wider forefoot, and over time they found that their injuries went away, helped them run a little bit more naturally. With that, it helps you run a little bit more midfoot, so you're not heel striking, because you will quickly change your gait, because if you hit your heel, it will not feel comfortable. Um, so there's a lot to take in. There's a kind of a longer conversation here, but just thinking about lower drop shoes. Okay, so um, they basically help you land on your midfoot, which provides quicker turnover, and an increased running economy is what most studies are saying. There's so many different studies out there. Some will say that it does and it doesn't. But at the end of the day, it's kind of less ground contact time, so you're quicker off the ground. A lot of studies point to that being good for your body. Less time on the ground equals less injury. And that's not for everybody. Obviously, we're all different people, all different bodies. And it just depends on your distances you're running. Some people can run in a lower drop shoe for a 5K, or some can run for a marathon. The problem is people jump into it too quickly sometimes. Sometimes you need several months to build up the strength in your legs to handle a lower drop shoe, your calves. Maybe you're coming from a 10 or a 12 millimeter drop. So that think about like it's wedged up like this, right? You're kind of like a high heel, and then you're lowering it down, so it's stretching your Achilles and your calf. So some people go straight from this to this because their buddy says, "Oh man, this shoe works amazing," right? And I understand that everybody just can't do that. And especially as we're aging, we're not getting younger, it's harder for us to do. So the recommendation is to switch it up from my perspective. Have a lower drop shoe in your mix, and then maybe have your standard everyday trainer that you've been running in that's maybe a higher drop. Okay, so now I'm typically in the 4 to 6 millimeter drop range. That's where I prefer to stay. It took me some time to get there. When I was trying to primarily run in 4 millimeter drops a few years ago, I was having lots of calf and Achilles issues, but I was also running a lot more than I am now. But it did just take time to, I guess, adapt my body to that type of running motion. So there's that. Okay, so we'll move on. Let's see. Turnpike said he's been running in the same shoes forever, the Kayano. Are the pros and cons versus heavy and light shoes? Yeah, so it's personal preference. If the Kayano's been working great for you, you've been running it since 2005. Why change, right? So some people just look for a little spark to kind of ignite them to faster running or improvement, right? And so you're obviously content with that shoe. You've been injury free with it. You get a lot of mileage out of it. It supports your foot well, your body. So I'd say stick with it. It's fine. It is a little heavier than a lot of other shoes on the market right now, and everything is going towards lighter is better, and that's where I work for Skechers, and Skechers Performance. Lighter is better is kind of our mindset. Quicker off the ground, a little bit lower drop. That's what we prefer. With that being said, I do recommend that you probably get a little bit lighter shoe to use on race day or during your tempo runs. It would definitely help out a lot. Just even mentally, you put on a pair of shoes that you run in maybe once a week or once every other week, and you feel amazing. You're like, man, I feel so fast on my feet, right? So just get something that's fairly simple, similar to maybe what your Kayano is as best you can. It's not going to feel the same, but you're also going to be running faster, so your cadence is going to be quicker. You're going to be faster off the ground, but you're just going to feel that much faster physically, but also mentally. Thinking about that, my coach had me do that years ago. He's like, you can't wear your racing flats during this training block, this 3-month training block. I only got to wear them one time for one training run just to test them out. And he's like, I walk around them as much as I want. And then on race day, I just felt so efficient and so light. I prefer to do some training runs in mine, but I can just tell you that it does have a mental effect on your running. And again, like I said, I would have a rotation of shoes. Fortunately for the position that I'm in, I get to have lots of shoes. So I have a little bit of everything to assort from lower drop to higher drop to, faster, lighter weight shoes to one with a carbon plate to something that's a little bit higher stack for easy or long runs. But, I personally prefer lighter shoes. Wearing, I guess, other brand shoes now, they just feel clunky, a lot of them. And that's just over time. My body's used to that, And I would say case in point with F3 Hacker. He's used the Kayano forever as well. He loves that shoe, but he has a rotation of shoes that he uses to strengthen his body, to strengthen his legs. And one of the shoes he runs in is the Go Run 6, and he loves it. And it's like probably half the weight of the Kayano, and it's a minimal shoe, so there's no support in it essentially at all. But he loves it because he only uses it for certain runs and certain aspects. So that's just something to keep in mind on that point. Then I just had one more quick question. It said, hey, what do you prefer in the Skechers line? Somebody said that they had been running in Hoka shoes. They love the cushion, but they heard really, really good things about Skechers, but they weren't sure what to buy or, they just didn't have a lot of knowledge of the shoes. But they wanted something that has a wider forefoot as well. So my recommendation is the Ride. So this is my personal favorite shoe right here. You can tell there's a lot of cushion here, right through here. It's our Hyperburst material. So we are the first to the market with this type of material. I can go into it in further detail later, but it's really cool how there's so much cushion here, but it's so incredibly lightweight. So you're looking at about 9 ounces in this shoe right here, and it looks like it's a much heavier shoe, or it should be heavier, but it's not. We put full Goodyear rubber on the bottom. We have a wider forefoot up here. You can easily take out the insole if you need a little bit more width because it has an integrated footbed beneath. So this is a neutral base shoe, but it gives you enough support. For some of you, it's going to be more of like a tempo day, because this is one of our heavier shoes in the line, but for a lot of people, this would be a lightweight trainer. So that would be my recommendation. That shoe is, just about anybody that wears that shoe comes back to me and says, I was really shocked at how responsive it was, how lightweight it was, but how much cushion was under my foot. So we've made a lot of progress through the years, had a really good last couple years in the running industry as far as Skechers performance with getting recognition and awards and things of that nature. So anyway, so I just had a few quick questions. I had a lot of the same questions that were kind of crossing the same path, so I try to knock them all out on the same type of questions. If we have any additional questions in the future, I will be more than happy to address them. So have a great quarantine and get some runs in.